We're good.
And we are live. Welcome to What Strange Savages, podcast number 5 in the Personal Economics series. Today we're talking about opportunity cost and how to help you make the best use of your time. So we'll start. Jason, what is your definition of opportunity cost, and why did you bring this topic up?
Yeah, I brought this up because I figured not a lot of people actually understand what they're sacrificing at any given point for what they could be doing or what they should be doing. And I think it's a really important idea to fundamentally understand in order to progress or grow in any way.
I'd correct a little and just say that I don't want to make people feel like we know better than them or whatever what to do with their time. I think people get, just to play devil's advocate, I think people get that they're wasting their time a lot. Like, I think people get that feeling. They're like, fuck, I'm just sort of stuck here at work. This is a waste of my time, whatever. I'm hoping, just going on what you said, to make more of an explanation of how you can sort of quantify and understand what it is you're actually doing and what you'd rather be doing.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. But I wasn't trying to... It was just something that I learned specifically that I thought was really important.
I just like to argue with you. It makes it more fun.
All right, fair enough.
So I'll just correct you every time that you've obviously made a huge mistake. I don't make them, so I'll just be the guy who corrects them.
Right, obviously. That's the way this will work. Anyway, I was thinking about talking about how habits get formed and how you actually just end up cycling around in the same things and not realizing what you could be potentially doing. And like tying off our value conversation that we had last week.
Yep.
I think this will kind of benefit in the way that you can start recognizing when you're missing out on potentiality.
Yeah, so our value last week, our sort of conclusion, our statement is that value is your preferences, is that you can prefer to be doing anything at any given point in time. And so now you're trying to talk about what exactly that means. If you prefer to be doing something, it means sitting down and understanding, I'm doing this instead of a huge variety of other things. Right. That's sort of what you said to me, and that's what I'm going with. And I really like that. The idea that right now I'm doing this podcast. I could be cooking, making my meal for tomorrow. Instead, I'm probably going to be buying lunch. Like, that's a random example. I could be pursuing relationships with other people. I could be looking for other work. I could be doing other things. And not to overwhelm my mind with that, but it's important to know that is what I'm spending my time doing, and that is an opportunity cost for everything else. Or how would you frame that?
Yeah, I mean that's obvious what you should be doing. I think we did touch on this a little bit in our last conversation, but I the way I wanted to go about this isn't so much as overwhelming your mind with every single what I could be missing out on, but like really recognizing the things in your life or my life that are significantly draining my time and not allowing me to do something else, right? So probably the best example, just off the top of my head, is I've dated a few girls that like really took up a lot of time, like a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it was
not
great.
Just time.
What?
I said not just time, but
yeah, not just time. Like my mental health, my well-being. Like they
and your financial health.
What?
I said, and your financial health. Don't ignore that.
That's relevant. A ton of things, right? I mean, that's the easiest one to pick on, I think, for anyone.
That's true.
Because it's so prevalent, and you get attached so quickly, and it consumes your life. All of a sudden, there's this new person in your life that you have to kind of like, circle around, like make room for, right?
Okay, yeah.
So, in my personal experience, and like I've had good relationships and bad relationships, but overall, like, I usually give a lot more into them and don't cut it off when I should.
What do you mean by cut it off? Like end the relationship, or like cutting off your daily interaction, or like slowing down?
Yeah, the relationship, or like putting it into a limitation. I'm the kind of guy that like when I start loving someone, I just want to spend all my time with them, kind of thing, because they're interesting.
Head over heels or whatever.
Yeah, and like halfway through, I know I should be trying to build this or do this thing, but I prefer to like hang out with them and do nothing, kind of thing, because it's it's a really easy way to like get out of responsibility. Is like, oh well, I'm just gonna spend time with or whatever, you know.
Well, and the thing I'd go with there is that, and this is like a really deep issue that maybe we'll talk about in a biological episode too, but that's where your gratification is, right?
Yeah.
It's really like from a strict biological sense. I mean, we do things, we get excited about things, we work and do all this stuff. Some people say for sex. I don't think that's true. I think it's for gratification though, right? Like we have to receive a reward. It has to actually feel good. It has to feel like we've done something.
Yeah.
And what we're doing matters because we get that gratification. And just, because it's a fact of biology, having someone you love and that you're intimate with be there and accept you and love you and care about you is kind of just the trump. Like it's kind of the winning hand.
Well, yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
No.
But it's the winning hand and it's great in that moment. But my argument would be, you have it now. Presumably it's meaningful and impactful. It'll last. You have to look beyond this exact moment where you're laying with them on the couch, because the second they're gone, that gratification, the knowledge of it exists, but it's now no longer exists, and you kind of have this empty hole like, I didn't spend any time working on anything else that I care about.
Right.
Like you've now sacrificed all of that time to this one source of gratification. And I think it's sort of like a diversify thing. As in, it's great to be good at one thing, and it's great to enjoy that one thing, but if that's the only way that you ever feel good or feel happy, you're completely dependent on it being in that exact state at all times. And I think every relationship, as anyone who's been through any can attest to, they're all dynamic. So even if it's a great relationship that lasts the rest of your lifetime and you're married forever, it's still dynamic. There's still going to be periods of time where your partner has other goals and ambitions and is busy with those, and you aren't the number one priority to focus everything on. Or you have kids and you have other priorities other than each other, and all of a sudden that single source, that watching Netflix feeling, where you're just both sitting there watching your favorite show and you're super comfy, and it's like, I get it, it's the best feeling, I love it, I absolutely love it, but that Netflix feeling, like, it's just kind of gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, it could come back, but that source is now gone, and you didn't cultivate anything that can fill the gaps. You didn't cultivate anything that can help bring you satisfaction and joy in the meantime. All you have left is difficult things.
Yeah, and I think that's a product of growing up, is like realizing where to fit that feeling into your life. Because like when I was 16, it was a huge thing, and like as
if I
grow
can
older,
get it, I'm gonna keep it.
yeah, and like you get a little obsessive and like whatever, a little crazy, but like that's just like learning where to put it. And then when you get to, I'm around 27 now, so. Now it's a little bit less, but I still sacrifice a lot to it. It's not everything to me, but like.
Well, and again, just because I like arguing, I would say, people talk a lot about, and it is maturity, but at the same time, it's hormonal. People, they learn where to put it, but I think a lot of people maybe don't even really learn it that much. It's more just that the urge was overwhelming at 16, and at 20, 25, 30, it's not overwhelming. It's still strong, but there's just not the overwhelming urge.
Well, I would bring up the law of diminishing returns on it, right? The first time you ever feel love is going to be the strongest because it's your only experience with it. It's like drugs, right? First time you do opiates, you always are after the opiate feeling, and you never quite get it, right? It's chasing the.
Yeah, yes and no.
I'm sure you do get like lower down, but like I'm pretty sure it's just you can put it in context, because like there's times where I get overwhelmed by some girl's hotness, but like I realize that hey, she's still like this, and she's still a girl and full of human fallibility, full of human fallibility, and she's probably really annoying, so I can properly box her. Into like not, oh, you're the angel that fell from heaven. You're just a girl.
Right. You're something I would sacrifice everything for.
Yeah, exactly. Like whereas the first time I got overwhelmed and like gave everything to the person or whatever, right?
Yep.
And then as grew up, it was better. It wasn't like I didn't have that feeling. It was just like I know the end of this road, and I'd rather not go down it.
I guess you get the experience, but I think there's something to the biology, and there's something in the feeling, and I think a lot of people go for that. I just want to touch on it briefly, the idea that people go for that, and I've gone for it lots of times, I think because they are missing some other kind of satisfaction, and I don't think now is the right time to get in all the reasons why, but I think you're missing some other satisfaction or some other factor in your life that is giving you meaning and giving you support and direction.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's why a lot of people, almost everybody, gets locked into those very often, or like every once in a while, depending on who you are, gets locked into that. I just want to sit here forever. I just want to do this one thing.
Yeah.
And I think a better replacement, or one of the better replacements, is building things that you can harvest later, right? So that Netflix watching time, that's sort of you harvesting on presumably the time you spent wooing somebody, getting to know them, getting close to them, developing some kind of trust with them, developing something with them where they would want to just sit there and be with you that whole time, right?
Yeah.
So that's you harvesting that, and that's you having spent a whole bunch of time cultivating and growing something which you now get to harvest. But
Right.
The problem is if you're constantly harvesting, which you can, because we have these sort of sustainable methods of social interaction and sustainable methods of working where you can get to a certain level of job skill and job satisfaction and then just kind of harvest that and just kind of coast on that same crop as it slowly replenishes over time. But if you want to grow a greater crop and provide greater value to everyone else and become bigger and more meaningful to yourself and to everyone, you need to occasionally slash your fields, because you need to find out what the best crop that is that can grow there.
Right.
And I think that was the other big thing that we wanted to touch on, at least to me anyways, that destruction and growth, and how I feel like you can never really get to that next level until you've slashed away something. So I kind of cut you off with your relationships, but maybe you can bring that in with, you were talking about your previous relationships.
For sure. I mean, that goes naturally hand in hand. It once I and like I like the way that you describe that as like sowing and reaping or whatever, because I've always thought of like you're either in one of two modes in your life. It's either consuming or producing.
Okay.
And like I think it's a really
the yin yang.
Yeah. Where most of your youth you're consuming, right? And then you have to like flick a switch eventually to get to the next level and start producing. But with my relationships, what it usually ended up being was just a bunch of consuming. So I would be around her for a feeling, and she'd be around me for a feeling, and then we wouldn't actually go to do anything. We'd only be reveling in our own whatever. And
you're both foraging.
Yeah, exactly. And law of diminishing returns, eventually it doesn't become as fun, but you're so addicted and you don't want to be without that feeling. It's really hard to start seeing beyond that to what else could be.
Absolutely. Right? So, and I want to use, just because we're on it, I really like this analogy, and I'm sure it applies because they're both biology. But that's the feeling of foraging for fruit, right? So you go out and you get sugar. And you can totally live off of eating foraged, sort of like fruits and nuts kind of thing. Like you're not going to die from it. You can go out and you can just do the foraging. And literally what you're doing is picking low-hanging fruit, which some guys are familiar with as being a term for when you're picking up chicks. But I think it applies for the exact same reasons, right? You're looking for somebody else who is so needy, who is also just looking for that quick fix. They're looking for the sugar. They're looking for the low-hanging fruit. You're both out there looking for that saccharin, that next piece of saccharin that you can put in your mouth, get the rush, and be able to walk the next 100 feet, or just lay there and have your sugar coma, your food coma, and just lay back on the grass. And I think that's fun. Like, I know it's fun. I've experienced it. It's incredibly fun. But
there's a time and a place where I go berry picking.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. But it is not. It's just not the same as ranching or farming. Yeah. Right, growing something that has protein, that has richness, growing something that you can grow in such abundance that you can then share that with the rest of the world.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that analogy, but I like it now. Keep going.
Yeah, no, right, but because paleo.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got its ups and downs, but it's not the same as cultivating and growing something or ranching. Ranching other animals. Something where you can actually grow exponentially in that work. Right. If you're just picking fruit, you can only increase the amount of fruit you can pick up to your handful. That's it. And that's the same when you're going out with your relationships and your work. If you're just picking the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that's ready for you to take, you are always limited to what you can fit in your hands, which
Yeah.
like metaphorically it's just not that much. It's whatever you can sort of do at the moment. But
Right.
if you want to grow into something, and that's always my greater goal, is to grow into something that can actually share with the rest of the world, not just be something that I can consume, but where I can produce and consume at the same time. That's
Right.
kind of the next level, where you can actually be constantly increasing your crop so much so that you provide more and the rest of the world benefits from it
Yeah.
with
And
lowered crop prices.
using that analogy to its end, it's like then you can start trading for other goods that you
Well,
can't fulfill
yeah,
yourself, kind of
yeah,
thing, right?
yeah, and that's
Yeah, I
when you're
really
young,
like that. That's a
really,
really good analogy for
right?
it, and
Yeah,
I kind of like that being the directive of opportunity cost in the sense that like
yeah,
one of the bigger things is to be able to develop um, trading routes and like
yep.
ability to get more than just what you were dealt.
And safety and reserve as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You
Um,
can't. It's hard to have a reserve when you're just foraging low hanging fruit, right? Because it rots. It's just whatever's ready to rot. And again, I think the analogy does apply perfectly because if it's personal relationships, the low hanging fruit means needy people who are just inherently unstable. They're not likely to be in reserve. They're not likely to be there for you when you really really need it. They're likely to ditch for somebody else who can give them their sugar rush right now.
yeah,
And if the low hanging fruit is a minimum wage job, which again, fine when you're young, you're still foraging, fucking around, having fun. But if the minimum wage job is the low hanging fruit, obviously it's low value. And as soon as whatever something happens to that business, you're the first person axed because you don't really matter because you don't, you're replaceable by anyone and anything. And so there's no reserves when you go for the easy pick. But if you cultivate huge job skills and huge ability to provide for other people, you're indispensable. You will never be without.
yeah, and that ties into value, which I think is an important subject to this opportunity cost. But yeah, I mean, going back a little bit,
Sure.
the destructive creative, like the last couple girlfriends, like I've broken up with them, and like
Yeah.
at the beginning of my life, it was them breaking up with me, because I think
Okay.
they were in my position where I am now,
Yeah.
like where I was like I'm the less needy of the thing, and I want to keep growing.
Yeah.
Um, and try something new or whatever. Like I'm still out there, so I really like the whole creative destruction kind of thing that you were
Yeah.
talking about earlier. Just in the sense that once we get into our habits or whatever, we stop. It's really gets easy to limit ourselves and gets easy to stop taking risks or whatever because you're getting that low hanging fruit. You're eating your Big Macs. You're getting the cheap shit that you
Yeah.
can get anywhere, and once you do realize that that's all you're getting, and you take a step out and you destroy a good chunk of your life to be able to try like traveling or getting a new job or like trying something new like a new hobby.
Or ending a big relationship,
Yeah,
whether
or,
it's
I mean,
romantic or not, even a friendship or
exactly.
whatever. Yeah.
I have, and I want to say this, like I've never walked away with something that in 6 months I wasn't glad I did.
Walked away from something.
From something, anything, job, money, like career, girlfriend,
Yeah.
like any of those things. I look back
I'm
six
sure
months
they're all
later,
happy to hear
hard at
that.
the time, but I have never once said, "Damn, that sucked. I wish I didn't do that." Like not
Yeah.
once, and I think that's a huge, huge thing to understand in life. It's like when you do mix things up, it may suck for a while, but as long as you keep going and like try, it takes off.
Yeah. So to directly talk about the opportunity cost there, um, I'll explicitly say what you're implying, which is that continuing to stay with my current situation, with a current habit, with a current pattern that I have, is denying me a huge opportunity. Now, if what you have going is fantastic and you really think is the top limit, like the upper limits of what you're capable of and what is available to you or what could ever be available to you, then I guess keep doing it. But if you ever want to go get more than what you have, it is only possible through removing a huge chunk of what you currently have. There is only a limited amount of time and energy in you every single day to do things. And if that X amount, if 90% of that is spent on your current habits, on your current weak or poor relationship, and your current weak job or weak situation, you won't rise above it by trying to grind out that extra 10%.
Yeah.
Right? So, and I mean, that doesn't even always mean leaving your job or relationship, I would say. Sometimes it means destroying it, though.
Yeah.
And when it's with other people, that means having the balls and, either walk away, or if you can't walk away, I think an even harder and more difficult and often more rewarding option is to go into those exact same things and say, this isn't enough. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
I want more from this. And that's fucking hard. Like, that's hard. No, I can barely ever do that. But when I have done it, it has been one of the most satisfying and rewarding things I've ever done. I'm always terrified of what the consequences are going to be. I'm terrified. Like, you don't even know it's this faceless enemy. Like, oh my God, if I say this or do this, I'm going to, but you just go in and say, I'm not satisfied. You tell your partner, this isn't enough. We need more. We need to be better. We need to be bigger than this. Let's get rid of what we're doing right now. Let's change it. Let's act like we're a brand new couple and let's create a new relationship. I think that's an incredibly rewarding and meaningful experience. And in my life, anyway, so far, I've never had that backfire on me. Just like you were talking about with yours, I've never had that backfire on me. I've never gone into a relationship between an employer, a person, whatever, anything like that. I've never gone in and said, I need this to change. This is inferior. It's not good enough, and had a bad result. Every single time, things have improved drastically. Whether
I want to clarify why that improved each time, no matter what. It's not that you always got a yes. It's not even like that. It's not always that you got your way. It's that you got to a point where you recognize the fact that, like, I need to get rid of them or they need to change with me, kind of thing. Like, and I'm good with either. And if they say, no, I don't want to change, then you're like, good, I am better off without you.
Yeah.
It's like begging the question. You already have your answer. You're doing better. Yeah. It's just like, which way do you want to go on this?
Well, and to be even more deep and yin-yang about it, it's that the problem is I inherently I take complete responsibility, sometimes to a fault. And I think that the way I look at it is just, look, I need to change. And my interaction with you, whatever that means, is not good enough.
No.
So I don't like to be like, look, you need to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know. I don't have a plan for the rest of the world, but I know that what I'm doing sucks. I'm putting myself in a situation that is not happy. It's not bringing me satisfaction. So, that's how I always sort of frame it. Anyway.
Again, like, it's not like they don't have any personal responsibility for it, but I think the only way.
No, but that's their problem to figure out, is my point.
Yeah, the only healthy way to approach that is like, I'm not willing to deal with this. This has nothing to do with you. It's just me. I cannot no longer maintain this level of whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
and some people push that as being. Like, I want to preemptively say, because I know people that would hear this and would talk about this, that would instantly say that that's not fair or it's not nice, or there's something that's not good about that mentality. And I just think
it's all your fault.
Hey, no, not like that. But I'm saying that if you approach someone like that, like, it's not fair to the other person. It's not fair to the other party. And I really want to preemptively say that I think that reaction, when you tell someone, look, what you're doing isn't good enough, and they go, oh, that's not fair, you can't just say that. To me, that's all just defensive nonsense. Like, if I tell you that I'm not satisfied with my interaction with you, there's no way for that not to be valid. I think that's such an important thing that people don't realize or think about. It's easy to get trapped into people pulling you in and going, oh, but if you say this, then you're acting like this, and if you do that, there's all these sort of qualifiers and bullshit.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I'm not happy with an interaction, it's okay for me to say, I don't want to keep doing it.
Yeah, and I want to, just to give an override of that, like, I totally agree. I think one of the bigger things with opportunity cost is that we often let our responsibilities bleed over into everything else. So that's why we don't really have enough time to do anything. And you kind of touched on it, but, like, limiting stuff and, like, putting things in boxes and being like, look, I can only hang out with you on these times and these hours rather than anytime, anywhere kind of thing, right? Like, being able to put your job in a box so it doesn't bleed over into your personal life, and putting this allows you a lot of free time to be able to experience other things.
Yeah. Hey, I like what you said, because, and this is sort of, to me, is more directed at younger people, but people of every age do it. But I remember that feeling of being like, ah, crap. I would always feel slightly guilty when I couldn't hang out with someone, and I've kind of grown out of it now.
Yeah.
But I remember that feeling, and I would love to direct it to anyone who listens who is younger, and gets the chance to think about that kind of thing. Is that like everyone's time is valuable to them,
Yeah.
and everyone's doing their thing, and when you choose to spend time with someone, choose to do it consciously and have limits on it. Because when you have limits on it, you're opening up your opportunities again.
Yeah.
Right? You're creating this dead space before and after that, during which you can explore what you need to do the most. When you give yourself open-ended jobs and open-ended interactions with everybody, or with even just a few people all the time, you are constantly depriving yourself of everything that's going to make you grow. You're depriving yourself of all those zero times, the times when people who become guitar virtuosos sit down and jam out on the guitar, right? The time the people who become programming geniuses start messing around on the computer and trying to figure out why a program doesn't work, and they end up learning how to friggin' code something. Those are those times where you have put limitations on other things. You haven't let everything that everyone else wants spill into all of your life. And to me, a huge component of opportunity cost is about setting boundaries with other people. I know it's kind of a shoehorn, but to me it seems like a huge part.
No, I think that's perfect. Like the two biggest things that I actually see are like the biggest blocks to opportunity, and like going to a place of abundance, or whatever we were describing earlier, is the whole it's either your job, which gives you the same warm, comfy feeling satisfaction as a girlfriend, or relationships.
Well, it depends on your job.
Burn as much time as you want just hanging out with some random guy that like doesn't care, like isn't going anywhere. And like same thing. Like I've been learning that a lot. Is like my time is more valuable to me now, and I refuse to just give it to people.
Right. So it's part. So this is part of the valuation thing. Is an opportunity cost is what is your time worth? Yeah. And then
that's value, right?
Opportunity cost is if you think that this thing is worth doing, and here's this, I'm sort of quoting you on this just to give you credit, but is if I'm doing this thing, I am implicitly saying that it is valuable and that other things I could be doing are less valuable.
Yeah.
So I think it takes a lot of confidence to say that. Like if I'm choosing to do this instead of hang out with a person, I think it takes a lot of confidence, but if you can do it, it's so satisfying and helps you set your priorities straight so quickly, because you can say, no, doing this is more valuable than seeing that person. And even being able to say that to them, no, I would rather do this. This is more important to me right now. And being able to set that boundary, I think, can make like such an immense difference in your life and an immense difference in how you do everything. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, yeah, just along that line. It's more what I wanted to touch on was habits in relation to like jobs and like girlfriends and relationships and stuff like that. Those are the things that actually like really bleed over into your life. Okay. And like don't allow you to do, and like give you that comfort feeling that you're like all protected and nice and secure. Those are the things that will actually limit you more than anything else from moving ahead with your life, or like they cost you the most. Like having a 9-to-5 job with a nice pension, limits you. Like that's the biggest thing about pensions is like you work 9 to 5 for 60 years for this pension at the end. When you turn 60, then you get it or whatever.
Presumably.
They lock you down and prevent you from doing anything else just because you want to get to that pension. Right? Like it removes all like potentials, everything that you could do, like go and travel the world or something. You're locked into this whole thing for forever. Yeah. And it's not always a bad thing if that's providing you with enough value, but I think a lot of people go into these things without thinking of what they could be doing. It's just like my ex-girlfriend, she has a brother, and they live in Timmins, Ontario or whatever, right? Yeah. And it's a gold mining town. So everyone there gold mines. And like it's not even like a concept of doing anything else. It's just you're 18, you now go work in the mines. And to me, whenever I heard about his life, all I hear is like, oh, he got married, oh, he has a kid, oh, and he's like, he's 21, and it's just so pre-programmed, and like, this is what you're doing, and that's it. That it was maddening to me, like just to have your whole life planned out by the time you turn 18.
Well, and I think what's happening there, what you're talking about, and obviously everyone sees it everywhere all the time, is that there's a subconscious calculation instead of a conscious one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean he'd even necessarily make a different decision. I don't know. But there's the problem, and anyone who has experienced any of this knows that that's like the biggest problem with it, all of society and everything ever, is people making a subconscious calculation instead of a conscious one. Like, if you could just see and think about the consequences of your actions, there are so many, I want to say crimes, but just everything that would be prevented. And I think that's what's going on there. You're doing the gold mine thing, or just any cultural tradition, any family tradition that people do, and they grow up and they spend their time doing that. They get married at this age, they get a mortgage at this age. And it's funny, I've personally talked multiple people out of mortgages, to stay on what you're talking about. I've personally I seriously, and like, not for any reason. I am not like an economic guru in terms of like specifically like property values in the area I live. I don't care. It's not really that important to me. It's not relevant because I'm not looking to get a mortgage. But that's all I do, is I just have had this conversation where I talk to people and say, how much are you going to pay in a mortgage? How much money is that every month? How much money is that every year? What do you get at the end? How long is that? Okay, now let's brainstorm for 5 minutes. And I've done this with multiple friends and gone, let's brainstorm what you could do with $3,000 every month. Yeah. Right? That you're spending, that that's your whatever, their mortgage payment or something. Yeah. That's like a number. What could you do with $3,000 every month? Let's think about a small business that you could make right now, because to me, the thing that's always exciting is small business, because that's how you create that abundance that you can share with the world, right? Yeah. Paying off a mortgage for 30 years, it's kind of that in between. Like, does that really give you abundance?
It doesn't create any abundance for anyone else, just for yourself.
Yeah, right. So it's, I hate to frame it that way because it seems manipulative, but it's it's just one of those selfish things. Whereas taking your money, investing it into a plan, investing it into a product or a service that you can give to the rest of the world is like, wow, you are creating abundance for yourself and for everyone else.
So that's actually an interesting way to look at it. Like, and I think the rewards reflect that. The more like buying a house, it has a medium reward, unless prices get super hot and you decide to sell. In which case, you're providing a service by sitting on a house for someone richer than you. Right? Or building a business where you're actually interacting and you're providing service, and you get a lot more reward that way if you're good at it and you know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it is riskier too, and so that's why I say people do it subconsciously, because I don't think they're making a bad choice, right? Like him working in the gold mine and doing that, it's obviously not a bad choice. Like it's obviously it's totally decent. So he's making that calculation and just going, yeah, having a house is good, it's stable, it's comfortable. Having a wife is good, it's stable, it's comfortable, and staying here and working in the gold mine is clearly profitable. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But it's he's not making that calculation. He's taking no risk, and really, to put it in sort of on that perspective, it's all selfish stuff. None of it is something where you're going, what can I do with this time? Because anytime you consider what can I do with this time, I think people are good. I think everybody's good, and I really do. I think when you give people time to think about stuff, and even when you make them justify it, when they talk about their negative or bad actions, they always try to find a reason why it's actually helpful to other people. Yeah. Right? Like if you get someone to explain why they're doing what they're doing, somehow it always seems to come back, even if they're like the shittiest person ever. Yeah. Like it always seems to come back around to how it's actually making the world better. Yeah. Like it's actually doing something to improve the world. Dude, so yeah. I really think at their core, everybody is good whatever, maybe some exception, who gives a shit. Most people are really good in the sense that they do actually want to improve the world and themselves. And I think if we can convince people to wake up and think about that and do that opportunity cost calculation, as soon as they think about it consciously, I know they generally do the good thing. They do the thing that goes, whoa, wait, what can make a difference? And that's something I would say to somebody getting that mortgage or settling down when they're still 21 and haven't made a real decision yet and don't really know what's going on. is this the difference you can make? Right? What difference could you make with that same $3,000 for the mortgage every single month? What difference could you make to your community, to your friends and family, to the people around you? Because right now it's going and sitting in a bank and going through some giant microtransaction machines into the stock market and a whole bunch of it's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with you or your life or your community.
And I think that's one of the more basic notes that I want to get across in this podcast, or probably in all of them, is like, take some risks. You know, because like just having the safe thing, go and do exactly what you were programmed to do, what you were brought up to do. Like, don't take. It honestly seems so two-dimensional. You can live your life like that, and you can be happy. I'm not saying you can't, but it's like, what's that quote? It's like reading the first page of a novel. Is like, you know, just living. Oh, the whole quote is like, just living in one city is like reading one page out of a book. You have no idea what the hell's going on outside of it. And I was trying to relate it back to this, but I didn't. Like my personal experience, my dad owns a business. Right? Like, I was brought up and I was kind of going to take over, and I was getting groomed for it, and like a lot of me like just rebelled against it, and I was like, you know, like, I don't want this right now, like, at all. You know, like, I want to go see something else. So I went and moved out to Vancouver, and I really like figured out a lot about my life and like who I was and like how I was supposed to do it. And I think travel is a great thing to do for that exact reason. You to kind of contrast your life without all the stuff around you and all the noise that you've adopted already.
Absolutely, yeah. For the right context, I would always recommend a dose of change, except to people who are addicted to change, to whom I would recommend stability, because stability is the actual change in that case.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to put it kind of poetically, but I just, as a counterpoint to what you're saying, or what's the same thing. But, you know, I've traveled a bunch, you know, been a bunch of different places and whatever, meet people in hostels, you meet traveling people, and a lot of those people are as stuck doing, you know, constant change as some people are stuck doing a 9-to-5. They're very trapped with the idea of, oh, okay, new thing, oh, okay, well, now we're here somewhere else. And they don't ever have to worry about themselves or where they're going, because there's this constant refreshing feeling like, oh, I'm in a new place, oh, good, I'm in a new place. And so I would recommend change. But to someone who's addicted to constantly moving, change means learning a single thing, digging your roots in somewhere, and getting really good at something. Because people who move around all the time, I can say from experience, it's very hard to get really good at something. It's very easy to gather little bits of knowledge and be the Jeopardy king, and like, oh, I know all about this, and oh, I've been here, and I've seen this, and I've done that, and none of those things gives you any value. And whereas to somebody who's stuck, you know, like you were saying, you're being groomed for a specific position, or being, you know, just doing your 9-to-5 and being stuck in that same job all the time, you are missing out on perspective.
Yeah.
And that's the big opportunity cost.
Yeah, and that was like the biggest thing that I would, and that's a better way to explain it, but like that's what I was trying to hammer home when I was like, I haven't regretted a single decision, giving up anything in my life. Because I actually, before I left to go to Vancouver, I was blinded by this viewpoint, and I couldn't see beyond it. And once I got there, now I'm probably blinded by some other viewpoint, but like, I no longer have that gap in my vision. Like, I can see how little, you know, like I didn't have a job for a long time out there, and like I can see how I can actually survive without having a job. Like, balancing a budget, because before, like, I spent money like it was stupid.
Yeah,
like, I just blow through money all the time, and now that I'm back, I still have these habits where I'm like, I'm not spending money on that. Are you crazy? Hell no. And that was something that I learned. It was something that I couldn't have learned staying where I was at, because money didn't have any meaning to me at that point.
Yeah. I just want to throw in there, the big thing I think we're both getting at here is, we talk about the semantics of opportunity cost, as in keeping the same girlfriend will, you know, or keeping the same, let's say, stale relationship will stop you from being able to explore yourself more. And keeping the same stale job or the same stale living situation will stop you from being able to realize that there are even other possibilities. But that's the key one. The big thing is the perspective. It's not just that you'll miss out on more money or a different relationship or a different lifestyle. The thing that you're really, really missing, and that you have to constantly realize you are sacrificing with whatever you're doing, is you are sacrificing other perspectives.
Yeah.
Because other perspectives are the thing that are going to give you the most human capital, the most personal wealth inside of yourself. They're the things that will give you the ability to see and explore new avenues of revenue and pleasure and satisfaction in your life. Right? That's having those new perspectives is how you do that.
Yeah.
Being just doing this one thing and zeroed in on it is great, I guess. But when you think about those people who are, I don't know, piano prodigy or chess prodigy, I mean, you hear about them and that's cool, and they hit a certain age and they're back to fry cook. They're back to nothing. They have nothing and they don't know where to go, and they're very lost until they actually start to explore and gain more perspectives. And they have that great story and that amazing thing to tell. But I feel like that's one of those things that you need to harvest once you've cultivated enough perspective and enough change in your life. You can then start to accumulate those all that together and actually grow something out of it. So it's really important to remember every time you're doing something, you're missing out on another perspective.
Yeah. And like one of the best ways I can give anyone a tip on how to gain a new perspective is think of the one thing you can't live without, and then live without it. And I swear to God, like, it changes everything. Like my most specific thing was like I refused to work out for the longest time because it sucked, and I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to get big, and I know some of my friends are like that now, and I've started working out and I've gotten a lot bigger, and like I love it. And like whenever one of my friends says I don't want to do that, I'm like, you have no idea what you're missing out. Like this is the most amazing transformational thing you'll ever experience, and you're just like so blinded by it. It's just you need to like if you can only eat bread and cheese, you need to cut that out so you can't eat it ever again. You know, picky eaters or something like that?
Yeah.
So you have to eat something else. And like eventually you'll find something that will be like, and you'll probably go to such a point that you won't ever miss bread and cheese again. You won't want to be like that because you've expanded your horizon. And I swear to God, like best way to do it, find whatever you can't live with or live without, and then do the opposite. It's fucking brilliant.
It's interesting advice. It's weird advice, but I think once you apply it, it's weird to think about in the abstract, but once you apply it directly, it all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I hate you, and then eventually you do it, right? Because I mean, you've said this to me, and I've done it many times. It's not a thing you just do and then it's done. I've done it many times, and it's like, you're wrong, and I hate you. And then you're like, oh, and I'm starting to do it, and I hate you because this is super painful, and there's no way you're right. There's no way you're right. I think actually, one of the good ones was you suggested sort of we both got on the paleo thing.
Yeah.
Which is just, I'm sure most people sort of know about it, but just the idea of eating meat, fruit, and vegetables. I don't want to go too much into the details now, but you're not eating bread and stuff. And I was like, no, that's dumb, and that's I need this, and this is grains are super important for this. And it's like, yeah, sure, but just try giving them up. And I was like, oh, yeah, that rebellion, like, no, I can't, no, I need these. These are delicious, and I want them, and it's my only meal, and I have to, and all these things. I was like, yeah, if it's that important, give it up. Do you think it's actually essential to life? And then, like, finally, I did, and it was just, even if I don't hold on to that pattern forever, like, even if I go back, which I kind of have somewhat, even if I go back to eating bread, having had the perspective and knowing, whoa, there's this entire system in my body that can actually function totally differently. That is an incredible perspective and an incredible piece of knowledge and piece of capital to have in myself, to know that about myself and to understand more about my own limitations and more about what I can be as a person.
Exactly.
And then to keep going on that, there's something I want to talk about, which is that with the crop analogy, needing to remove a huge swath of something in order to literally make the room for something else to grow. And this is the hardest one, and it's the hardest part for people to understand, because when you have something that works, and even sometimes it's continuing to grow and gain strength, it's so hard to understand that there is probably something better out there. It's so hard to understand that there's not just something better out there, but there's something better that you actually could have right now.
Yeah.
And you can't just kind of tack it on to what you already have. You can't just kind of like throw it in there as well as. Right. You have to, and I'm not saying just do this all the time. Obviously, there's a time and place for it. But you have to actually, like surgery, you have to just cut out a big piece. Less like surgery, more like working out. You have to rip out a big piece and then have it regrow. And when it regrows, you will gain something more and learn something new. A great example is before we do the podcast, we sort of try to talk about what we're going to talk about, right? We just do like a test of it. But we test it and it sucks because we don't know where to start and we don't know what to talk about. And then we don't save that. We don't write it down. We don't do anything important with it. We just get rid of it. And then when you have that chance back from zero, you now have the previous experience and perspective, but now you get to do it again. And you always do it better. You always do it better. As if there's anything you've ever built that if you could destroy it and rebuild it right now, you wouldn't do a way better.
Dude, Lego, man.
No, Lego. But think about it. If there's anything you've ever worked on or loved or done, if I could rip it out of your hands right now, you'd be pissed. I'd be pissed too. But at the same time, there's kind of part of you it's like a little bit like, oh, I get to restart. Restarting is the best, right? No, it is. And like you hate it, but at the same time, and this comes in with. I was sharing this with a friend of mine who recently had his house broken into and his laptop stolen, a whole bunch of stuff, and like obviously shitty, awful. And he's a musician. He's got all this stuff saved on it. He's got his system, his programs. He's got all these things laid out. It's a massive chunk of his life. And I was like, but isn't there that piece of you that's like, now I get to start again? And you know what I mean? And of course, you would never choose to throw it away.
No.
But seeing as it is ripped away, isn't there that awesome feeling of going, you know what? Screw all the stuff I made before. I'm going to remake it, and it's going to be better.
Yeah,
I'm going to actually get to like make it like 100 times better because I now know everything that I learned from the previous stuff. It's not like it's actually gone. As long as your brain is intact, I still have everything that came with it. Which is why I think, as we were talking just now, I was worried, like, is advocating for change all the time, is that kind of like negative and you're telling people to throw stuff away? Maybe that's not good, but I think this is really why it is so valuable. Because as long as you're willing to cut out pieces of what you have, and sometimes you don't always know exactly what's going to fill the gap. Sometimes you have to kind of jump from log to log. And when you don't know what's going to happen, that's when it gives you that opportunity for growth. Because you never know what could be improved upon if you removed what you have now.
Yeah. Well, and just change in itself, like, it attacks your weakness and destroys it. So you can't have those specific weaknesses anymore. Like if you like have particularly abusive friends and you're like, screw this, I'm never hanging out with you guys again, and burn that whole section of your life. And then you go meet.
No, sorry. People. Just to give your example, but more clarity is, if you move cities. Yeah. Let's say you have abusive friends, and then you move to entirely different city, or you're a kid, you go to school, you move to an entirely different school. And sorry, continue.
You're more likely not to, like, I mean, if you have no ability to learn, then you'll find the same people and do the same thing. Yeah. But if you've evolved, you look at those people and you'll be like, I don't want to be around you people. And you'll go and actually find some people. And it might be lonely for a while, for sure, but you find.
But most importantly, the people that aren't totally cancerous will probably show up again.
Yeah.
Right? The people that actually matter, the people that actually were meaningful, even if it's only 0.1% of them, they'll actually probably still be there.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you go through that hard transition and change, you'll lose everything, and unless you're completely stuck in the same mindset, you're going to regrow the positive relationships. Maybe it's with new people. But you're not going to regrow the negative ones if you have any depth of understanding whatsoever of your own mistakes.
You will never be able to go back to those relationships. This is a big thing, because like that's the thing. Like I look back and like some of my changes that I made. Like I will never date certain types of girls ever again. Like I'm not like that anymore. Like I cannot go back to being like, oh, you're so hot. I forget all the things about your personality and how much of a bitch you are. You're hot, and like I'll do whatever I want, like whatever you want from this. Like I cannot do that anymore. And I've grown and I've experienced, and like that's the best thing to do is just. When you start figuring out that, hey, this sucks, I should try something else, and actually start putting weight to these ideas and like decisions, and like actually start cutting things in and out of your life according to what you want, that's when you'll be the most
thinking about it, holding up, like you just said, just adding to it, holding up that ideal, which I think maybe Stefan Molyneux said something about that being the definition of humanity or intelligence, but the ability to hold up an ideal and to work towards it, right? To not just act as an extension of your past, not just an extension of things that happened to you and before you, but to act upon, no, regardless of that waves pushing me, this is the thing I want, and I'm going to go towards that.
Consciously, deliberately reaching and deciding to go to something else, not just what the current's going.
Yeah. So like it's easy, and so that's why this advice, isn't a guaranteed thing to help you in your life, because if you just wash around and go, oh, okay, I'll just move to a different section of the city, or I'll just find a new girlfriend, or I'll just get a new job, that's not it's not going to do anything, right? Because you're going to find the exact same jobs, you're going to find the exact same relationships, you're going to have the exact same shitty friends who just want to go out and whatever, do something stupid with you that you don't want to do. Yeah. It only works, and the change and growth only works if you have a concept of what you know is better. Because if you know something is better, if I know that it's better not to have someone who, this is irrelevant to me, but let's say I'm overweight and I have friends who call me fat and make fun of me for it all the time.
Yeah.
If I know that that's bad, most people aren't going to just ditch their friend. Right? You're not just going to ditch your friend because you know that someone calling you fat is bad. You're like, oh, but they're also awesome, and they help me, they drive me to work every day.
Yeah, because nothing's cut and dry. Nothing's black and white like that.
No, but if you are willing to cut out swaths of your life and make major changes, when the field lies fallow, when everything is burned out and done, and you go to rebuild, what the first thing you're going to reach for, if you have a higher ideal, is not going to be the person who makes fun of you for your weight, the person who belittles you and doesn't help you towards anything better, the person who just blindly makes fun of you.
Yeah.
You are not going to reach for that person. And that's why it's so important to be willing to strike all these things and to change them, because you don't recognize that opportunity and the loss, that you don't understand that you are actually running at a loss. By continuing in that shitty situation, it doesn't feel like it, but you were actually running at a loss because you could have been doing something better.
And like one of the more key things is it only becomes apparent that you're running at such a loss after you've cut it out. And that's the hardest thing about the whole thing, and that's why you get abusive relationships. That's why you get all. It's because you don't understand how much better it is when you get rid of that cheap fucking Big Mac or like Barry, and you go in for a real steak.
Right. Which is, hey, no, I like that. I like that because it's making me think. It's that finally putting that stupid cliche to some use. Hindsight is 20/20. So let's put some shit in the rear view so you can see what's going on. Right? Right?
Like it.
No, seriously,
man,
it's
status. I'm taking that for Facebook. That's genius.
I should really go on Twitter. I swear I should go on Twitter because I think those things are there. But
Dude.
No, it's true. If hindsight is 20/20, which it is, and everyone's like, oh, well, it's easy. It's already happened. Let's make some stuff already happened. If you want to, you can redig it up. You can recall that person. If it's an old fling, so pull them up on Facebook. Do whatever you want. You can always go back to something if you really, really need to. But chances are you're not going to want to.
Yeah.
But put it in your rear view. Put it in your rear view and then analyze it. Don't analyze it now while you're trapped in the middle of it. That makes it impossible.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. It's like there's very few relationships that I've actually like burned the bridge to the ground.
Yeah.
That I couldn't mend it in some way at this point if I wanted to.
Yeah, if there was a really good reason to, and you knew.
Like if I was like, look, dude, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. That was my bad. Yeah. I don't think there'd be too many people would be like, take a hike, Jason. You did too much. And like I've done some bad things, you know.
Yeah.
Like two people. Like I know I can mend them if I want. I just don't want to because I'm like that was not worth it.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with them.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and that's. Yeah, and well, I mean, the perfect example is, your and I relationship took a hiatus at a certain point, and we didn't talk. There was generally bad feelings, etc. And it wouldn't have changed, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Because mostly you didn't feel like it was worth continuing at that point, right? The only reason it did continue is because I brought something valuable back, and then we brought something valuable to each other. It didn't just continue. That relationship didn't just continue on through crappy interactions between you and I, right?
Yeah.
It didn't just continue on through toxicity and through negativity.
No, yeah.
You just keep slugging it through. It stopped. The relationship actually stopped, and it would have never have continued again unless something improved or changed, which is like, I think, a perfect testament to how powerful this is.
Yeah.
Right?
How powerful value is.
Yes, but I can't imagine how much you and I would have lost if it hadn't actually stopped at a certain point.
Yeah.
If it had just continued to spiral. I mean, there was an important stopping point, but if it had just continued to spiral on kind of a lot of negativity and distance and not real connection, I can't imagine what we'd have lost in not having to work to regain something and actually build something meaningful out of it.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think, but in my life that's happened so many times. And as much as I had a lot of rough time going through different schools as a kid, it hit a certain point and I started to like it. And I was probably addicted to that change. But I know a lot of people who they've had friends since they were 5. And they've had that same friend up until they graduated high school or something, and they never really learned how to make new friends. They never really learned how to step outside their comfort zone and how to actually like put themselves out there.
Right.
And I feel like I had the opportunity by being not constantly, but regularly put through change and regularly choosing to go through change. I wanted new schools. I wanted new things. I regularly learned the ability to just be out of my comfort zone, to just be around strange people and have to find who's able to talk to me and who's interested in talking to me and why. And I think that's more of what makes it so valuable to have to go through change. If you just let change happen when it kind of feels like happening, it might never change. It's kind of just easier to do the same thing forever.
Yeah.
If you don't actively step outside your comfort zone and push yourself out there, you won't realize what you've been missing.
No, yeah, and it's exactly as we said. Like you need to actively pursue change from the perspective of a higher ideal.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that you're ever gonna actually like appreciate or like experience something new. Because if you're just stuck with the same shitty people day in and day out, nothing's going to change. If you're stuck at the same dead-end job, you're never going to travel, and you're never going to try something else that you might like. It's only once you get out there.
I was going to say, if you never, to put it crassly, if you never threaten your relationship, like if you never go to your relationship and go, we need something more.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe threatens too much, If you
that's a perfect way to say it. I know other people don't understand it, but that's perfect because it's like I am willing to walk away from this if this doesn't change. If you don't threaten it, you'll never know what it could be.
Yeah, and because if you never have that empty space, if you never have a little bit of suffering and a little bit of, oh my God, I need more than this, then you'll never work for more than that, and you'll never move on to more than that. So that's like the ultimate way of evaluating if what you're doing is meaningful is to look behind you and see it. Yeah. And it's like incredibly difficult and incredibly hard, but I'd highly recommend it to anyone. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I want to leave it off if you have anything else to add.
Perfect with me.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay.